Hey everyone, welcome to the video. I am so excited to start these historical timeline series. Like, you have no idea, my heart is racing because first of all, this is the first video and I am a little bit nervous on how it's gonna go, but I love history and I'm reaching out to those who love history as well and those who love old homes and all that fun stuff. Like, come on, you and me, we could be best friends, right? Right. As you can see by the title of this video, we are starting off with wallpaper. And I know you're probably like, wallpaper, Allie? Really? Out of all the things you want to start a historical timeline series of wallpaper? Yes, I do. I really do, because there's actually a really interesting history to wallpaper. And we're going to start it off with the lie that people are told, a lie, that it started in Europe in the 15th century. Excuse me, that is incorrect. Incorrect. Wallpaper goes way back, way back, and we'll talk about that more in this video. Another interesting thing that we'll talk about in later videos is how wallpaper became a murderer. I said it. A murderer. Wallpaper. Innocent paper became a murderer. That sounded really weird. Anyways, we'll talk about that in later videos. But this video, we're going to talk about where wallpaper really started and how it started and how it came to Europe, where everyone thinks it started. So let's get talking about wallpaper. All right, to start off this conversation, I am actually going to read to you from a book. I know that kind of sounds weird, but I have multiple research papers and articles and books that actually get the start of wallpaper wrong. I'm going to read this little sentence from this book. So at the beginning of this book about wallpaper, it says, the great diversity in design, use, and quality of the early wallpaper makes it hard to give a simple overview. Appearing for the first time at the end of the 15th century. Wait a minute, that's not true. That's not even close to the beginning of wallpaper. So I looked into it even more, and once you really look at the word wallpaper, you're going to be like, oh, that makes sense. Why didn't I think of that? So let's go ahead, break it up, and let's go over the two sections. All right, the first half of the word is wall. The definition of a wall is a side of a building or room, typically forming part of a building structure. Pretty plain and simple. In the word wallpaper, it's referring to where the paper is placed. They also used wallpaper on ceilings and furniture, but obviously the most common place to put wallpaper is the wall. So the first half of the word is pretty simple, just talking about placement. Now for the second half of the word, it seems simple because it's just paper, but paper has a long history, and that is where the story of wallpaper really begins. Paper was created in China during the Eastern Han period, which would be 25 to 220 BC, so quite a while ago. Paper was made with mulberry bark, hemp, and water. and they mashed it all together into like a pulpy mixture, and then pressed all the liquid out of it and then hung it to dry. So as you can imagine, creating paper was quite the process. And then not too long after that, in around the time of 200 BC, the Chinese started to paint murals and patterns and beautiful flowers. And I'll show you some designs of what the first kind of wallpaper looked like in China. But they hand painted all of that and pasted it to their walls. So around 200 BC was when it was official that wallpaper was started. Okay, now that we have covered the questions where it was invented, which is China, when it was invented, which is 200 BC, let's move down the timeline to where it started to spread. It wasn't until the 8th century that wallpaper became popular in the Middle East. During the 8th century in the Middle East, they improved the ingredients for making paper. It used to be really rough and choppy and not very elegant, you could say. So they improved the ingredients list and came up with a mixture that made the paper a lot smoother and easier to paste to the wall, which also made it easier to paint on. So overall, they improved wallpaper during the 8th century. But it was still handmade, still hand painted, and also they were still doing it by single sheets. So they would take single sheets and paste them each to the wall and line them up so that it would create one big pattern or mural. And as we move down the timeline a little farther to the 12th century, that is when the first kind of inkling of wallpaper, or you could say wallpaper, became a twinkle in Europe's eye during the 12th century. Later on, Jean Papin, or Papillon, I do not know how to say his last name, but he revolutionized wallpaper in 1688, which we will talk about in the next video, along with the T word. Yep, you heard me say it. We are going to talk about the T word in the next video. So, hide your kids, hide your wives. We're going to talk about the T word in the next video. You have been warned. But before we go, I decided to recreate some old wallpaper on my iPad, and you can watch me draw it for the next, I think, minute.